Okay. Mr. Juarez, if you raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I, and then state your name,
I, Daniel Juarez,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of member of the Board of Education
perform the duties of member of Board of Education
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability,
and according to law,
in accordance to law,
and that I will at all times
and that I will at all times
strive to use the power
strive to use the power
entrusted to me
entrusted to me
as such officer
as such officer
for the best interest of the city.
for the best interest of the city.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations and welcome. We're excited you're joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be a part of this wonderful group of people.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 5:35 p.m. and I will call to order this regular meeting of the New Haven Public Schools Board of Education. And I'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda is public participation. And public participation is included as part of our agenda. The Board of Education is gathered to hear testimony and also to conduct the board's business. And we do ask for those who participate in public participation that you respect the guidelines. There's a limit of 3 minutes per participant. We ask that you do not, that you refrain from identifying specific people or making defamatory comments. But please do feel free to communicate to the public and to the board. If there are other details, board members, that I should mention, please let me know. And I will also turn it over to Dr. White. And Dr. Joyner, you can help me,
Sure.
please moderate the session.
At this time, all those that wish to speak, please raise your hands. Okay. Dr. Joyner, let me know when you're ready.
I thought you were keeping the timer.
Okay, yep.
On the screen. Don't you have it on the screen?
Yep, I was just checking, make sure.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to step in if I sense that we're not honoring the instructions.
Okay. Our first speaker is Leslie Blateau.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Leslie Blateau. I'm a teacher and a parent in New Haven Public Schools and the current president of New Haven Federation of Teachers. Welcome, Mr. Juarez, to the Board of Ed. And I think the oath the oath that you took spoke to me tonight, that we're all working in the best interest of New Haven. And I want to recognize the work of New Haven and New Haven Public Schools in what we are doing collectively to keep all of our students safe, given the attacks that we know are coming from the Trump administration. We know that the Trump administration does not have the best interests of our students in mind and ultimately wants to slash education funding to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. So I wanted to take this time this evening to share with the New Haven community that the New Haven Federation of Teachers, along with our Labor Community Coalition, we are going to be marching forth to resist these attacks on Tuesday, March 4th. We are going to assemble at Gateway Community College at 4 o'clock. And we are going to mobilize our community to then march to the New Haven Green to stand up to protect our kids, to protect our schools, and to make sure that people know what's at stake. We know that if funds from the U.S. Department of Education are gutted in exchange for tax cuts for billionaires, that would rob our students from low-income families of critical services. It would strip supports for our students with disabilities, our special education students, of key supports, and it could potentially eliminate some of the career tech ed programming that I know New Haven takes incredibly seriously and does great work with our students as they're developing future job opportunities during their time with us in high school. So this is the time for all of us in New Haven, as we know that this is what we do, to stand together, to unite, and send a clear message that we care about our public schools, that we care about our kids, and that we are going to do everything we can at the local and state level to protect our students and protect our schools. I hope to see Board of Ed members there. I hope to see members of the community there. It's going to be a powerful afternoon, and it really is just the beginning of the ongoing work that's needed at the local, state, and national level to ensure that services continue for our students. Thanks for the time, and look forward to seeing folks next Tuesday, March 4th, where we will march forth together.
Our next speaker is Sequella Coleman. Ms. Coleman?
If my hand is raised, it is by accident. Welcome. Have a wonderful meeting. I will continue to listen.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Heiklis Williams.
Thank you, Dr. White. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Heiklis Williams. I am the president for the Paraprofessional Union, Local 3429. And I just want to piggyback off what Leslie just testified. While we face those attacks that she mentioned, and we, the Local 3429 members, we're willing and we will be participating in that marching forth on March 4th. But despite our dedication and our hard work, our compensation is still far below the current cost of living, resulting in low morale and motivation to do our jobs in assisting the education of our students and families, which impacts the quality of education that our students receive. Our working condition are the students' learning condition. A fair or a living wage is a necessity and an investment in effectiveness and well-being of the staff that plays such an integral role in our school and community, in our schools, I should say. The city of New Haven is booming, but yet we're dooming and glooming. We work face front with students, yet we're the lowest paid in our city. We're asked to do more and paid less. This makes for weak hands and feeble knees. Think of how detrimental it is when closer to 100 paraeducators have left the district in the last couple of years, primarily due to the invaluableness of their work and worth. Low wages, high insurance cost share, and no pension. How dignifying is that for those who have served up to 56 years in our district? What is the moral thing to do? To downpay the poor and hardworking staff and pad the pockets of the well-off contractors, or to do the just and right thing? We ask you to please help bring equity to our pay. This is a matter of justice and a great investment in our students. Also, there's a Parabill number 7010 that will assist us with insurance cost share and pension. So we're asking the community and board members to support this bill, Parabill number 7010. Thank you and welcome, Mr. Juarez, to our board. We hope that you will do the just service that Ms. Rivera did to us when she was on the board. So thank you so much and have a good night.
Our next speaker is Kathy Gonzalez.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathleen Gonzalez, and I'd like to take a moment to review a timeline of events to provide clarity for everyone listening about what has been happening at Nathan Hale. I apologize for what might be to some redundant, but we have many more eyes on the Nathan Hale situation now, so allow me to catch everyone up. On August 13th, parents received a welcome email from a teacher introducing herself as our children's second grade teacher. She sounded delightful, and we were excited for a great year ahead. Then on August 28th, we received a follow-up email noting that a recommendation for hire had been made for the second grade classroom. So our teacher was no longer a teacher. However, as you've heard, a formal hire was not made until late September, leaving our children without a certified teacher for weeks. During that time, concerned parents repeatedly reached out to both building and district administrators. While some clarifications were given through email, our request for a meeting to address our concerns was not granted until February 10th, 5 months into the school year. That's unacceptable. Yes, Band-Aid solutions have been offered, tutors, push-ins from certified staff, but none of that changes the fact that this last-minute vacancy and lack of urgency caused our second graders to fall behind. This was not an unavoidable crisis. This was the result of what I can only describe as thoughtlessness on behalf of New Haven Public Schools. A technology position was filled by a Nathan Hale classroom teacher, causing a domino effect, leaving our students in second grade forgotten. Board of Education, tonight we are not just asking for empty assurances. We are asking for a specific timeline detailing when academic support services that were introduced by Dr. White and Principal Cass during a meeting this morning will begin. We want to know who will be responsible for implementing them and how often they will occur. We are also asking for your oversight. We need you to monitor this situation, be present in the school building, follow up with staff who have committed to helping our second graders catch up, and most importantly, ensure that something like this never happens again. Our children deserve better this year. The least we can do now is ensure they receive the support they need to move forward. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kim Steele. Kim Steele, you may speak.
I tried unmuting. Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes. Please
Okay,
begin.
thank you. Yes, I'm Kim Steele. I'm the grandmother of a child at Nathan Hale in the second grade. She received her first homework packet in the month of February. And at the same time received a letter saying that she would probably need summer school. It's insulting, to say the very least. It's incredibly insulting. The lack of education has been astounding. And you can see the slide. It's very evident. She asked the other day to bring her iPad, so because they get to play on them during the day, or kids use their cell phones. Again, unacceptable. We don't send her there to play. It's to get an education. And you have one second grade that's getting a full education, and the other second grade that has been left to languish. She won't be spending her summer vacation in summer school. That is not acceptable. It's not a substitute for classroom instruction that should be happening on the daily. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker, Morgan, please state your full name when you come on. Morgan. Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your full name.
Okay. Hi, my name is Morgan McLennan, and I am speaking as a parent who is deeply frustrated and disappointed of the second grade classroom at Nathan Hale. I wish I could say that my child experience this year has been one of growth, stability, and opportunity, but it has been defined by uncertainty, inequity, and blatant disregard for the educational rights of my child and all of the children within that classroom. The second grade class has been without a permanent certified teacher. From the very beginning of the school year, we have watched our children be shuffled around between substitute and left without structured instruction and denied the consistency they need to thrive. Meanwhile, just down the hall, there's another second grade classroom that has been fully staffed with a stable learning environment and are far, far ahead of all of the students within my child's classroom. It's difficult to sit here and talk about this as we say that you guys are committed to student success when an entire group of children have been left behind. We as parents have done everything we are supposed to do. We have raised concerns, we have asked for meetings, we have sought out solutions. Time and time again, we have been ignored, dismissed, or told, unfortunately, this is the current situation. It is really unacceptable. The current situation is a direct result of decisions made or not made by the district. And while leadership stalls, our children suffer. I'm here tonight to say that this has been enough. This district has claimed to be committed to equity, yet it has allowed an entire group of students in the second grade to experience an education that is anything but equal. We really demand a real plan, not a vague promise, not temporary fixes, but real accountable plan to ensure that our second graders receive the education they deserve and make up the time that they have lost. We demand transparency so that we as parents are not left begging for answers when their children's futures are at stake. Our kids can't afford to be an afterthought. We need action and we need it now. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cannell McLennan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kania McLennan, and Dr. White, good evening, and everyone, Mayor Elicker. Another parent at Nathan Hale, and I do want to start off by saying I love Nathan Hale. We've been there, my wife and I, we have 4 kids, and we've had beautiful experience from pre-K up until this point. It is truly heartbreaking, as all the parents have said, that of all our 4 kids, we see one child that's been caught up in the process. And understanding that nothing deliberate in terms of on the Board of Education, but understanding visibility from day one, parents did sound the alarm of concerns. What is happening today was a concern that parents had then in the beginning of the year, and we offered ourselves in terms of availability, transparency, to make sure our kids succeed. What is truly heartbreaking is the patchwork up until this point. The timeline, as Kathy clearly defined, as to what happened, who knew what at what point, and understanding that we had an important meeting this morning, which I did appreciate and do appreciate, and there were promises made, which I take hold to that wholeheartedly. But visibility to make sure these things are implemented, because at the end of the day, the fundamental goal is for these kids to succeed. I'm very mindful that my child is one of 20 odd kids in the classroom, 20 different learning styles, 20 different personalities, 20 different souls, 20 different, human beings that will develop to be positive examples in the world. And yet we know and see that the start was a false. The current state is not enough, and we are close to the end of the school year. And my concern has been from the beginning and continues to be, will what we're doing be enough for our children to succeed. We are adults. We are the one that are guiding them. And I'm looking forward for the Board of Education with all their resources that is available current state, dollar amounts, whatever tutoring, whatever extra resources now that needs to be implemented, monitored, and showing results for those to be implemented ASAP. It's truly one of these things that we talk about inequity, and it doesn't have to be on other scales, but truly from an educational standpoint. This is the first experience I've had like this, and it truly does fire me up to say what is happening in other schools, in other school systems nationwide. And, you know, the previous speaker spoke about the paraprofessional, which is one of the interventions that we're asking for the classroom to say not only the educator, which I understand that they feel it as well, but what support services does the educator have in the classroom to make sure these kids succeed at the end of the day? Again, what I'm asking the Board of Education is provide resources and sustained monitoring that will make these kids succeed. I appreciate your time.
Our next speaker is Paul G. Please state your full name when you come on.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. My name is Paul Gonzalez, and I am here tonight as a father who has watched his daughter's education be disrupted by the lack of appropriate staffing at Nathan Hale School. My daughter Sophia is academically getting by. She's on grade level, but I can't help but wonder where she would be if she had the consistency and structure she deserved this year. How much more could she have learned? How much more confidence could she have gained if she had the stability of a dedicated teacher guiding her every day? But this issue isn't just about academics. One day, Sophia came home and told me that she was hit with a chair in her class. She has described the students being physical with one another and entire days where learning is impossible because the class is so dysregulated without a teacher. She has lost recess, not because of her own behavior, but because without structure, expectations, and leadership, the entire class is struggling. These kids are frustrated, overwhelmed, and lost, not because they are incapable, but because they haven't been given the environment they need to thrive. Board of Education, we're here tonight because these students deserve better. They deserve stability, structure, and an educator who can guide them, not just academically, but socially and emotionally. They need a certified teacher. Without one, this class has been left behind. And the most heartbreaking part, they will never get this time back. They will move to New Haven Public Schools forever, just a few steps behind their peers, not because they lack the ability, but because they lack the support. This cannot continue. We urge you to place our students with a certified teacher, give them what they need now before it's too late. They need their chance to do well, to thrive, and to grow. And that chance starts with action from you. Thank you.
The next speaker, Mackenzie, please state your full name.
There we go. Hello, I'm actually, Mackenzie's my daughter. I'm Anne Marie Moquin. And good evening, everyone. I'm another concerned parent of a child in the second grade at Nathan Hale. At this point, it probably seems redundant with what we were all saying, but we are all in agreement and feel like this is a very serious concern for our children. My very first email to the school was back on September 12th with an email sent to Miss Cass and Miss Rizzo, just asking for what's going on in the classroom and what is expected of them. There've been a lot of in and out between teachers and subs, who's there, who's not. as stated before, one of the parents had said, my daughter just came home with her very first homework packet tonight. And this is 5 months into the school year. She's just getting homework. My daughter has always been very good at her reading, her math. She has an IEP, yes, which is a whole nother situation for these families that have children that have IEPs and are probably falling more behind. But I then get a letter that says my daughter needs to do summer school because she has not met her benchmark, which is not any fault of our own. When there is no teaching, no stability, no anything in that classroom, they're not learning anything to teach them. They're not learning the foundation and the fundamentals that they're going to need growing and going into the next grade because they're not being taught anything. You guys say no child left behind, but all of these children are going to be left behind because what's going to happen is they're going to get pushed forward to the next grade and they're not going to know the foundation of the math for next year or even the year after because they were never properly taught and understood what was given to begin with. We get no updates on what's going on, no progress. We're not being told anything. When we, again, the lack of equity between one classroom and the next is absolutely absurd. How one class can get so much attention and help and then the other one gets nothing. We have no transparency. And just as a very frustrated parent, as I mean, we're all, I don't know if we're all parents or what, but it is very frustrating. My child started crying because I tried to help her with a math assignment that she just had to do in class. She didn't understand it. She's crying because she didn't know what was going on. Math is her favorite subject. It is very discouraging for these children. And it's sad that every adult in their world for the school system has let them down. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mary. Please state your full name when you come on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Mary Hall. My son is Ryan Blunt. He's a second grader at Nathan Hale. He also has an IEP and is struggling because of the lack of organization, lack of structure, lack of connection with one steady adult every day. And I think it's really, really sad for these kids. They can't get the time back. They're only going to be in second grade one time, and they're going to be going into third grade behind. And, I feel for all the parents, I feel that it's really unfortunate that our concerns weren't heard earlier in the year when we all reached out to the Board of Ed, the superintendent, Dr. White, Principal Cass. We reached out and we weren't heard. No one was interested in having a meeting. So I just hope that the commitments that were made this morning are upheld because these kids deserve it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stephanie G. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Jones. Good evening, everyone. I agree and share the same concerns with all the parents that spoke before me. Most were sending our
Hello?
children off. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Stephanie Geneus. Good evening. I agree and share the same concerns as all the parents that spoke before me. Some of our children are behind. As for my daughter, she is behind in everything. And not only is she behind, which is a problem that I have to work with her confidence and her spirit has been completely crushed by this year. Last year, she was excited and eager to learn. And we always had to push her, but at least she was like gaining confidence with the structure she had last year. As for this year, the lack of structure, the lack of a consistent teacher, she has no confidence. She cries when she has to do homework and when she doesn't understand things. She's constantly second guessing herself. So not only do I have to try to get her back on track, I also have to help her build her confidence. Um, I'm asking, like we all are asking for a constant certified teacher to actually teach these kids and get them back on track, and for there to be accountability for whatever the principals are saying that they're going to give, for them to actually give this to our children. They deserve it. Thank you.
Dr. President, that concludes all raised hands.
Thank you, Dr. White. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Thank you for those who shared. Next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of February 10th, 2025.
So move.
Thank you, Ms. Downer.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, we will vote. Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Colon,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Mr. Motzer.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm a yes as well. Thank you very much. I have to find everybody on this screen. Oh, thank you. Next is the personnel report. Dr. Negron, anything to share?
Good evening, everyone. Before I seek your approval for the personnel report today, I did want to highlight 3 retirements that you should see in that report. And that is Mr. William Frank, math teacher, who will be retiring at the end of June 30th. He will be serving 28 years with the district. And actually, I know him personally because he was one of my teachers when I used to be the principal over at Hill Regional Career High School. We also have Mr. Harold Houghton, special education teacher, also retiring at the end of June after serving 37 years. And last but not least, we also have a pre-K teacher, Ms. Barbara LeBlanc, also retiring at the end of the year, June 30th. And she has served for a total of 33 years. So again, these are 3 individuals that have dedicated many years of service to our students and families and the community at large. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. And that concludes my personal report.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. Thank you for everyone's service. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Thank you. We'll vote. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Juarez?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Colon?
Yes.
Mr. Motzer?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Next, we have the second reading of the NHPS Student Liaison. And this is just a second reading. Dr. Benitez?
Yes, I would like to ask the New Haven Board of Ed members to read this document for the second time, although there
there has been in the past practice at times that at second reading we seek approval. At this time, we are asking for a second reading, and we will ask for approval at the next meeting. However, I want to clarify that the administration, those are our staff, have identified two members of the leadership team in at central office who will be working with the students in reassuring that this is a success if we indeed approve it. So I want to give the administration a little bit more time for them to set up things so that when we approve this is something that if we approve it, if we all agree, is something that we are going to actually do. So at this point, I am just asking for you to read again and to ask any questions that you may have and send me any concerns that you may have so that our staff can set up any support that our students may need in order to succeed in this very important new initiative that they would like to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Dr. Joyner.
I'd like to briefly support what Dr. Benitez has just said. Oftentimes policy is passed, but the administrative procedures that are necessary in order to execute policy are challenged. So what I would ask is that we hand the policy off to the staff and they get together and decide what are the administrative procedures that would be necessary to, one, execute, monitor, and evaluate that particular policy. She works very hard on this, and we don't take these things lightly. So please, let's support that.
Thank you. Is there other discussion? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move to the next item. Finance and Operations Committee, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you, sir. So before I make the motion for the action items, would anybody like anything moved separately? Ms. Downer?
Yes, I was looking at 7.1.
Okay, I'll first make a motion, and that is that I move that we approve the 1 memorandum of understanding, the 1 agreement, and the 4 amendments.
Second.
Oh, okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll vote. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Juarez?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Ms. Colon?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Next, I move that we approve purchase order 7.01, which is a purchase order with Tucker Mechanical.
I second that. Any discussion? Ms. Downer?
Yes, I just have a quick question. I wasn't sure. I know we had approved $360,000 of repairs on call with Tucker Mechanical. How does this amount reflect that 360? I see a couple of items, low items, of course, on this information are also coming from Tucker Mechanical. Is this 87K being applied to that 360 as a repair for the I think it was for the wheels on the chiller.
So I'll just briefly comment, and then perhaps if we have more questions, somebody from the administration would be able to comment on this. This would be in addition to the previous thing that we approved. And my understanding, based on the testimony at the Finance and Operations Committee, that this is some things outside of that, including the chemicals that go into the chiller. And there's in the supplemental information on this, they do have a listing of the things that is covered in that, but this is in addition to that.
Oh, okay, because I know that the wills are very important. So I would think that I would like to, maybe I'll have to look into it to see the contract, what it says, because I know the wills is very important to the chiller. So this is not something that would be in addition. This would be something that is just like a serpentine belt on your car. And that's the wheels that the belts go on. So I'm just a little curious to what the contract actually says. This is an important part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Additional discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Joyner.
I would hope that, because I mean, it would take an engineer to understand that and to see that as an issue. I would ask that we approve it, but we also know the answer to her questions, because we don't want to inadvertently approve something and then people come back and say, well, you know, I needed this too. So it's up to the administration to figure that out. How we could know that what we're approving is a complete solution for the problem diagnosed, and not something where a contractor could come back later and say, in order to do this, I needed this widget, and so I'm going to ask for that as well. I hope I'm being clear.
Yes, and I think the question is about whether this should have been included from the beginning as part of the regular service contract. Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Mr. Aline?
Good evening, everyone. Jamarlene here for facilities. To answer your question, Ms. Downer, the on-call contract is just an on-call contract that allows us to draw down an appeal number when we require services. There are no particular services that are included in that for a particular job. It's more of a, hey, I've got a problem, please come and take a look at it, and we draw down on the on-call contract. When there is something like this that has a large cost, instead of depleting the on-call contract, very often we will then separate it and award it either through one of the three procurement processes that are approved through the procurement department. And so this particular project here, when they went to go take a look at this device and opened it up, found that the impeller wheels are broken, and also that the refrigerant is no longer in the system. And so this is a cost to repair that particular problem, not associated necessarily with anything specific under the on-call contract, which is just a drawdown PO for us to request service in general. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Aline. Ms. Downer?
So does that imply that the 87K will not be applied to the 360 that we approved?
That's correct.
We had two of those. So what happens to that money? Because we have that's almost like $800,000 just sitting out there.
So that money is being drawn down on for services. We have work orders that require service every single day. So one of the contracts was for Tucker. The other contract I believe you're referring to is for the controls, which is a separate vendor. So the Tucker contract for $350,000, that contract is actually almost at its finished. I'm actually we'll have to request additional funds to get us through the next month and a half. But again, that's a drawdown PO for every request that we put in for them to repair something. And usually when it passes a certain percentage or threshold of the contract, we would do it separately. Otherwise, it eats away at the entire contract and we won't be able to get all the smaller jobs done. So it's an addition.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Thank you, Mr. Aline. Dr. Joyner?
Dr. Yarbrough, I'd like to make a point that I think is really important. we have been playing catch up with building maintenance for as long as I've been on the board. And actually, we've been playing catch up ever since I've been in the school district. I started in the school district in 1970, so you can do the math. Unless we can help power sources understand that simply funding a school district, we're not without considering its infrastructure, and without considering the fact that some of these buildings are as old as the Taj Mahal, then you're always going to be playing catch up in an urban district. We have to let the powers that be know that this is an issue. In a good world, you would have a maintenance schedule for every building, just like you have one for your house. Writ small, you do that at your house. Writ large, you do it in a large system. And the impact of that is not just on the school district, it's on the entire city. Because Mayor Elicker has to work with the alders to provide a greater local share for education, which means that they also are diminishing funds that they might be able to use in terms of city infrastructure and personnel issues. So we can't just look at this as a problem that we're not getting enough money for our schools. We're not getting enough money for our schools, and that forces our city to pay more money for our schools. And you have a ripple effect that really affects every single citizen in this city, especially property owners and taxpayers. And it requires a dramatic and radical change in allocating resources for our school district. And that is also, to some extent, responsible for the teacher shortage. But it would take too long to go into that. But at some point, I think we should explain to the public why not only New Haven, but every urban community and every rural community in this country has a teacher shortage. And it is also a problem that's not limited to the United States. So we're going to have to figure out where those power centers are. And we're going to have to come together as a group of people demanding that the taxes that we pay to state and federal government, that they be directed back to those communities in a fair and impartial way. And that's certainly going to be a challenge in this particular climate, but we still have to press for it and not stop pressing for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Points taken. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Additional discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mr. Jorez?
Yes.
Ms. Colon?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries. Dr. Negron, is there something to say about the information only personnel reports? Or not at this time?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have on the agenda our students report. Ms. Colon, Mr. Musser?
No students report today.
Thank you. Superintendent's report. Dr. Negron?
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Good evening, everyone. Today, I wanted to take this opportunity of the superintendent's update to begin the conversation related to our budget for fiscal year 26. So with that, I'm going to ask Dr. White to please put up the PowerPoint. And I will begin, but then I am going to have our CFO Linda Hannans and Ms. Christine Bourne support with the presentation. So Dr. White, we can go to the next slide. Before we dive into the discussion of the draft of for the budget for fiscal year 2026, I want to take a moment to make sure that I ground everyone on our path to excellence. As you may recall, last year, starting in January, we began with a design team that was representative of our community, both internal constituents as well as external. And we came together to define what we wanted to see in terms of our strategic operating plan, which is now known as our path to excellence, which we began to implement this year. And the reason for this is that I want to highlight the mission of the New Haven Public Schools based on what we created. We aim to empower every single student who walks through our doors to thrive by providing them with a strong and solid public education that is going to prepare them so when they leave us, they're ready to go out into the world, whether they're going to go and pursue further studies at college, or whether they're just going to go straight into career or military service, whatever it is that they choose to do. We want to make sure that we are providing, again, a solid public education starting from kindergarten all the way to the 12th grade. So again, remembering all of that, I now want to talk about the budget. So in our next slide, to achieve that mission that you just heard me reiterate, all of that needs to happen, but in order for that to happen, equitable funding is essential to this work. So again, today, I want to reiterate that this is just the initial conversations on steps that are necessary to ensure that our students receive the support they need. And our objectives are focused on creating and implementing a budget process that is transparent, allowing all of our constituents to understand what it is that we are asking for, what it is that a budget ultimately is supporting in terms of the financial resources and the allocations. And it is vital that we see and that everybody see through this process our commitment to equity, and that ultimately we're seeking for this budget to align to supporting the instructional core, but also maintaining fiscal responsibility, because we know we have to achieve a balanced budget. What you are going to see today reflects the true cost of operating our district. And please know that we're also working to create a team support system to enhance the resource planning so that everything that we have is strategically aligned to the priorities that make up our path to excellence. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is the beginning of a conversation. That is why we are saying this is a draft, right? It's simply a proposal. This is not the final. On the next slide, I also want to take an opportunity for everyone to understand, who are we doing this for, right? This budget is meant to support the students who we service. So here at a glance, again, this is unofficial enrollment data that we capture from October 1st. Usually we wait for the Connecticut State Department of Education to certify our numbers, but we are basically supporting about 19,000 students across 41 school facilities. In the next row, you see the different levels, and followed by the demographics of the population that we serve. And in the last row, I just want to highlight the need, right? The need that we are trying to meet when we try to ensure that every child is getting the best education possible. So here you could see first that we are, as we've always been, very diverse, both culturally, but also linguistically. So you see we have 78 languages that are spoken across the district, and that we have a large number of our population who are students that have been identified as students with disabilities, as well as multilingual learners. Again, students, what we call high needs, that require additional programming. You also see here levels of poverty. When you look at the number who qualify for free and reduced lunch, basically have a little bit over 75% of our population, again, that it's living in poverty. And also you see here the number of students and families that continue to be challenged by housing instability. So all of it to point out that there is great need, which is very similar, not just to New Haven, but to also other large cities across our district, again, other urban centers. In the next slide, I want to take an opportunity to speak about what is it that we do? What is it that we fund? What is it that we provide our students? What is it that goes into those resources that make up our budget? And what I am attempting to do here with this chart is to give you just a snapshot of what it is in terms of the learning experience that we offer our children. So of course, we begin with the academic programming, which you can see here. When we talk about core academics, basically we are speaking about literacy, ELA, math, science, STEM, social studies, and world languages. We also talk about health and physical education, as well as the arts. So that becomes our core programming. But I want to lift that in New Haven, we also are very proud that we go well beyond, for example, in what it is that we give our children as it relates to the arts. The fact that we have always invested in ensuring that our students get access to both performing and visual arts programming. That requires resources. So I'm giving you an idea into resources that go into making that programming happen, from full-time employees that we have at the K-8 level, as well as part-time staff that supports the programming. Also full-time and part-time staff that supports the programming that we're able to offer at the high school level. And also great partnerships that we have been able to secure year after year that supports, because we're not able to do it all just based with the staffing that we have. And the same thing when we hone in on health and physical education, the fact that we have our budget accounts for 77 certified teachers and 4 Project Pride teachers, as well as 11 health teachers. These are all certified teachers that make up this program. I want to remind us also that in terms of that core academic program, a lot of our program is now aligned to Common Core standards, as well on the literacy side to the science of reading, based on all the investments that have been made over the last few years. But again, in terms of programming, it doesn't end there. So that's just the core, what we provide all children. We also know, as you saw on the previous chart, when I mentioned to you the level of need that our children come to us with, we are very proud that we are able to offer and integrated models to support both our students with special education needs, but also our multilingual learners. So that is why there have been work done to ensure that we have a very clear and comprehensive continuum of programming to support both special education children as well as multilingual learners. So here I've given you a little bit about what that programming looks like in special education. We have co-teaching models. We also have specialized classrooms across the district. We also offer a transition program for students who are ages 18 to 22, just to give you some examples. On the multilingual side, the fact that, again, that spectrum goes from being able to offer TESOL support, but it doesn't end up there. We have always been very proud, for example, of the dual language models that the district has, as well as the newcomer programs that we're able to offer to support our children as they're acquiring English and making the transition into their mainstream classrooms. Again, all of that requires certified staffing. We also know that with that programming, not all children learn at the same speed, because as human beings, some of us learn faster than others. And that is why we always have to look at bringing about intervention and enrichment supports for students, right? So for example, on the academic side, when we know that students need a little more to be able to grasp concepts and to ensure that we can get them on to grade level, there are literacy interventions throughout the district. You may be familiar with one that has been in existence for quite a bit, and that is the Read 180 intervention program. Those are in our classrooms to support literacy. As well, now we also use, for example, iReady as an intervention that we offer children as it relates to math and understanding math concepts. So there are also FTEs involved in that programming, as well as tutors who come in. We also know that the interventions not only come on the academic side, that we also have to provide interventions for students on the behavioral side, because not all children respond to the universal systems that we have in place. So for example, that's where additional supports are needed to be able to do that work. So to give you some ideas in terms of resources, those are things like our ISS coordinators or youth coordinators and all the other pieces that go into supporting our Tier 2 and our Tier 3 programming on our behavioral side. In New Haven Public Schools also, we take pride that we teach the whole student, that it doesn't mean we just are going to tend to the academic needs. No, it means that we're also going to support children as it relates to their social and emotional needs that they may have. So that is where we ensure that resources also take into account the FTEs that we need in terms of support staff, such as school counselors, school psychologists, social workers, speech and language pathologists, psychologists, for example. And there you see some of the FTEs that we currently have that are supported in the budget. Later, you're going to hear me talk more about gaps. But again, I wanted to speak about the fact that it's about meeting the whole child and bringing about the supports. We also have a restorative coach that supports the district. We've been able to support our schools and look at strategies on the social emotional side. Very proud to also have school community care coordinators, as well as services that are provided not only to the families, but also to children through our school-based health centers and family resource centers. But in addition to this work, You've often heard us speak about the fact that we're very proud of our college and career pathways and how we are seeking to even go deeper into the college and career pathways, because we know, number one, that is how we can attract students and better engage them as they're going through their K-12 programming. But ultimately, we want them to have rich experiences at the high school level that are going to poise them well again for what it is that they want to do in college or the career that they are seeking. That is why in the district, we also have a wealth of advanced coursework that is offered, and that comes in the form of dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment or AP courses. I know that last year we gave you a detailed presentation on this work. You also know that we now have 6 pathways that are up and running in our district. Last year, you remember, we had the ribbon cutting for BioCity. So that one is up and running, as well as the business pathway, the culinary pathway that, again, is nationally renowned, right? Great work that Chef Bradshaw does year after year, as well as the pathway that we have to be able to grow our own teachers, because we know we have a national shortage. So we do have a pathway also in education, as well as health, career, and manufacturing. But all of that also is complemented by the experience that we want to give our students, that it isn't just about them taking classes, it's about the experiences that they're able to gain as part of those programs. So we look for opportunities to engage with our partners so that more and more our students can graduate not only with our high school diploma, but so that they can also leave us with industry certifications, as well as those experiences having been out there in our community through internships. So those are some of the experiences that our children receive right now, as well as athletics. Like, we know that tonight, hopefully if I get lucky, I will be able to go see Hill House play against West Haven for the SSC championship. And hopefully if our boys are winners tonight, they'll be going into state championship. But we know that, again, New Haven Public School has had a rich history related to athletics. So I've given you an idea of the different programming right now that is supported in our budget through or not only our certified coaches, but again, supports that we have primarily related to middle school athletics, right? We know that the opportunities at the high school level are very rich. Not so much at our middle schools, because we've always been very tight with our funds, but even with the limited funds, we're very proud that we're still able to bring these middle school experiences to our students. And not only that, but also the fact that we continue to make investments to ensure that we are addressing student attendance and student engagement. So there have been a lot of resources dedicated, such as dropout prevention specialists, youth coordinators, mentoring programs. And I know that on Wednesday, I will be sharing data like I do all the time with the administrators, keeping an eye on our chronic absenteeism. And there has been great work. Of course, there's more to do. But again, those investments are being able to offer supports that are needed. And last but not least, we are in the field of education. So always, 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 we have to make investments on professional learning, because we have to ensure that not only our teaching staff, but also our managerial staff, we are all updated on the best strategies in accordance to research in terms of instructing our students and being able to run the district. So there have been significant investments made in that area related to reading and literacy that came from all the resources when we implemented HMH, as well as the letters, professional learning, aligned to the science of reading, the work that we're doing now around DataWise, place-based learning, the work that we've been doing around assessments, as well as welcoming schools and building thinking classrooms in mathematics. Again, this is not comprehensive, but I wanted to give you an idea of when we're speaking about a budget, what is it that we're funding? Yes, we are funding chillers. Yes, we are hopefully, right, funding ceilings that have to be repaired with hopefully with our capital budgets and the supports that we get. But in terms of general budget and in grants that come in, these are the learning experiences that we are trying to fund and make possible for every single child that comes across our doors. In the next slide, I also wanted to remind us that a lot of that programming that you just heard me speak about, that we are so proud of, that we continue to celebrate, please keep in mind that the last 3 years of that programming, the bulk of that programming was supported with the federal dollars that came in through the ARP ESSER dollars. So this is a slide that many years you saw. I wanted to bring it back to the forefront to remind us again that millions of dollars went in to support our budget, because our budget, like many other urban environments in major cities, has been underfunded for many, many, many years. In the next slide, I do want to take a moment now, mostly to try to unpack things for the public, is in understanding how it is that school districts are funded, right? A lot of the funding comes in, but it's based on our per pupil expenditures. So it has to do, number one, with the number of students who we have. And then it has to do a lot with different pieces that go into the education cost sharing formula that we're going to touch upon in a few, and that you have heard Mayor Elicker and myself and others advocate at the state level for changes that are so necessary as it relates to ECS. But here again, I wanted to show you where are we just when we look at the New Haven County. So here you have all the districts that make up our county. And when you look at the last per pupil expenditures that were released by the State Department for year 23-24, you see that we are right here, sort of like in the middle in terms of how much we are spending per pupil to try to address all the needs that you heard me reference when I was speaking about our enrollment at a glance, right? So we are sort of like in the middle there. In our next slide, I also wanted to show you in terms of the per pupil spending and the per pupil costs. So the way that this works, if you can see, is that if you look at New Haven and we are this bar on the left, a lot of what you see there is orange. So a lot of our funding right now comes from the state level because we are a priority district and also an alliance district, basically that is measured by levels of poverty. So you see that a lot of how we fund or public education in New Haven comes from the state. What you see in blue, and I want to point out to you also the other urban centers. So keep your eyes on the blue for New Haven, but take a look at Bridgeport, which is the second one. Jump over to Hartford, and then jump over to Waterbury. I want to show you that New Haven or local support continues to increase year after year. And we are very fortunate for the increases that have come related to our local contributions to school. Again, in trying to support the gaps that exist for us. The other ones come in terms of our federal grants, which many of those are our entitled grants, such as like Title I, Titles 2, 3, 4, IDEA, all of those are the ones that you see here. I forgot to mention that all of this goes back to the per pupil spending that we had on record for years 22 and 23. And the reason why I wanted to show you the comparison of also Greenwich, Hamden, which is just next door, and Westport, is you can see the total amount of allocation per kid. So just imagine if we were to increase our per pupil allocation by the gap that we have between New Haven and Greenwich. You are talking about millions of dollars that would be able to come. But again, we also know, right, the amount of dollars that exists in Greenwich locally, a lot higher, right? The amount of dollars that exists locally in New Haven. But again, I wanted to show you those comparisons here with this chart. In the next chart also, I wanted to take an opportunity to break a myth, because we hear myth all the time. And usually the myth is, listen, let go of all of those administrators and you'll be fine. You'll be able to close the gap. You'll be able to fund the schools, right? And I want to show you that when you just look at the administrator, meaning central office staff and our school staff, and you look the comparison again, and there is the average when we look at our comparison districts, average 157, we are below the average. Big school, second largest urban district in our state, we are below the average. You look at our certified school support staff, also well below the average. You look at our non-certified support staff, also well below the average. So everywhere you look here, well below the average. Right? So again, going back to the original slide, not losing track of who all of our children are, what it is the programming that we are trying to do. We want to make sure that we are keeping in mind both federal, local, and state. And in our next slide, I wanted to remind you as well of the work that was done a few years ago to get at an equity formula to fund our schools that looked at national caseloads that said, how many students should a counselor have in their caseload? How many students should for example, a school security officer at a school have based on the enrollment? How many interventionists should be at a school? How many media specialists should be at a school? So how many social workers should be at a school? You saw how many were currently funded. We are nowhere near what it should be to be able to support the caseload. So when that was done, the gap was enormous. I want to remind you that we were looking at about a $35 million gap just to be able to have the resources in all of our schools as it relates to the national caseloads. So with that information, next slide, Dr. White. With that information, I wanted us to, again, get grounded on our path to excellence, get grounded on where the funds come from. Remember that right now, there is a budget that has been proposed at the state level to keep all those things in mind. And now I am going to be inviting our CFO, Linda Hannans, to continue the presentation to show you in terms of what the needs are when we look at our numbers related to next year now that we don't have ESSER funding. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hannans.
Good evening. Outlined all of the various programs that we have within the district, through our funding streams, where they are, different scenarios with some schools here are federal magnet schools, other schools are SIG schools. There work, we have one, and then we have, I think it's 22 title. And then with the multilingual learners, it just shows you how many, and then the percentage of those folks in those buildings. As you can see also on type of the schools, whether they're a magnet school or whether they're a neighborhood school, total number in-house, and then the suburban students and versus the New Haven student. Our enrollment, as you can see, in 2018, we were at 21.9. 25, we're down to about 19,000. This chart is important because I guess folks think that because you're enrolled more money, which is not the case. There are still services that need to be provided. You know, as the country changes and other things, there are more needs that we have with our students. Needs to our students.
Can you pause for one moment? It seems like there's some internet problems with you just coming in and out. Can you, I'm coming over to work out for a second.
Okay. So both of ours then.
You're still,
coming
here?
Yeah. The internet is going in and out, in and out. Yeah. Be back in business? Go for it. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so with our, I think I left off with our historical enrollment. So we're at $19,134. However, just keep in mind that the services or the needs of the students does not change because our enrollment is going down. And we could see that, you know, with our special ed and all the other numbers that we have and the staffing that we have for service to provide the various services. Okay. Our key trends, New Haven, it has the ECS, and then we have our Alliance funds. As we all know that our ECS funds have been stable for quite a long time now, and any increases that we have in ECS Alliance must be in the grant portion and cannot be in the regular city portion. So what happens in a case like that is that you can see next year, I think we're expecting 1.6 more, but it has to be in new programs. We can't, add it to what we already have. We have to do new things with it. So a lot of the programs that we no longer have funding for, we may be able to use some of that for those purposes, but we're not sure because we would have to write a proposal for it. Next slide, please. Okay, so our change in grant funds, and year after year, I try to make sure that we show this because it's very important. We, in 21-22, we got a large influx of grants, and we had over $200 million worth of funding. And as you can see, once the years started going by, you see a sharp decrease in the available funds. For next year, we're only estimated right now to receive 84.7. So if you look at 2018-19, you'll see we're going back quite a few years to the funding levels. Slide, please. And here we're just showing you a change in grant funds over the years, which I just spoke about. And here it is basically in the grants. Breaking out the grants into, what they were and what they were for. So you see grants like Head Start. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see the ARP-ESSER grants and a couple of the other grants that we have that for for next fiscal year, where you'll see a large gap. We're expecting no funds in those grants. So as you can see, we're in 23-24, we were at 144, and you looked at projected revenue for 25-26, we'll be down to 84.7 thus far. This is projected, but it's a close enough number where we should be concerned about how do we continue providing the resources and all of the robust programs and things that we have developed for the kids and students and staff, and how do we continue to fund those initiatives. Next slide, please. Okay, and as you can see on this pie chart, I like to show this pie chart with every budget because you can get a real quick visual. And so what it's showing that with our state and local funds is starting to be the bigger piece of the pie now. Now, this is not saying that this is what we're going to receive locally, but I'm just trying to show you this would be all of the yellow part would be all of the funds that we would now be looking for. With the state grants is the blue, the federal grants is the red, and the private grants are minuscule at this point at only 2% of our actual budget. I'd like to show this pie chart because it does show you, and you can look right at it and you can see where all the money is coming from and where the differences are. Okay. And then now we're going to go in the initial projection. With last year, which is this current year now, we needed there was a shortfall of $8 million, $11.8 million, excuse me. And so now with the 24-25 budget, we have 208. Our request is 225, and the difference is 16.9. That results in an 8.14% increase. Now, I noted that this does not include any new requests. It does not include any vacancies. It's just a bare bones budget. So what we did also was that because, you know, when I took this role, one of the things that we talked about was transparency, putting it all out on the table and just showing you where the numbers are and what they're being used for. So with the 24-25 budget, again, our budget was 208, 263, 784. And our 25-25 request, if we included all vacancies in the budget, and this would be all the teachers' vacancies, I forget what the number is thus far, the difference would be 23,231, 188, which would be an 11.15% increase. Now, you know, we're showing these numbers because we need to just put everything on the table, show where we are, and then get support and the board support to say, okay, which budget are we going with? The one with no new requests, which means all vacancies would be off the table, or are we going with the 23 the 23 difference? I thought it was important to show all of these numbers again because it's important that we show these numbers. We know in the past we were able to use a lot of grant funding or be able to move things around. We no longer have that luxury because we don't have any additional grants coming in. And the ones that we do have are basically entitlement grants, which were given to us to do specific things, which would be like Title I, Title II, Title IV, and those types of grants. So it's very important that we just show the numbers for where they are. Okay. So now when we get to the revenue assumption page, and if you look at 24, 25, those are still projected numbers, but both basically they're 98% correct. Everything that was coming in has come in. And when we have the 24-25 numbers, we have the education cost sharing, which is the amount that is always 142.5 so far. I've shown the ECS Alliance grant, which shows the 1.6 additional revenue coming in, which again, I must emphasize, it has to be for new things. And then we have the local, and I just want to point out that the 82.7 is not what we're getting from local taxes. That basically is just the difference of what the city is going to give us when we find out what that number, and then that will leave a number for which we would have to look for other resources or, you know, take whatever action is necessary to fill in the gap. The interdistrict grant, we don't have has not been certified yet, so we're hoping that at least it would stay at the 36.8 that we got this fiscal year. And then in tuition billing, we've tried some different things with the tuition billing. Unfortunately, as costs keep going up, we have not been able to get the amount of funds that we had anticipated that we thought we would be able to get. So this is a little bit more realistic effort of trying to capture some of our costs with the tuition billing. And again, I mentioned that with the Alliance grant, any increase must be for new programs. Local taxes is determined by what the Board of Aldermen, the amount it gives us. Again, keep in mind that we are not looking for 82.7 from the local budget. Interdistrict magnet, I explained, and tuition, the new strategies to increase revenue. Next slide. Okay, so with the proposed budget, what we did this year, was this the slide? Okay, so this slide here basically shows the first scenario where we're asking for the 8.14% increase, and we're showing you where we expect to make, the expenditures are occurring. And I just want to point out too that with the fiscal year 25-26 or the approved budget, what happens is that, so people can understand it better, we get, like, say we got $200,000 and we knew we we needed, like, say, $210,000. We can only budget in our financial system. We can only budget the amount of money that we receive from the city and the Board of Alders. So that's what this number is. So somebody might look at a line and say, well, ooh, gee, the numbers to the left don't match. Well, that's basically because we only budget what we actually receive in our local budget. So what has to happen is that we have to basically back out or add what we can, and then the rest of it is just, we'll take, how you say it, we'll add line items as we see appropriate until we get to the $208 million. Now, we, during the year, we can make, we do projection reports every month, so it shows where we are, where we're going, and then we make adjustments in between the lines. But again, keep in mind that we're a bottom line budget, so this is all that we can budget on the system. And so with that, we're saying that our budgeted amount, what we would need next year for actual cost would be 225, plus the increased amount of 16.9, and the percentage increase again is 8.14%. Next slide. Okay, the next slide here just shows you again in graph form where the expenditures are, like operation of plant. And as you can see, the bulk of the number is in the full-time personnel line, which is coming in at 127.2, which is 56.5% of our budget. And then we also have our part-time personnel, which are all basically support costs that go into our schools, our instructional, our transportation, and then our operational plan. Next slide, please. And this slide here is general funds 24-25. This is just showing you where our funds are currently at the 208-263. Next slide. Then what we did was we have another budget 25-26 just to show you the differences. And this budget here would show if we included all of our vacancies and all of our actual costs, if we in the real world, if we really had this kind of money, these would be the expenditures, and that's when we come up to the 11.15%. Now, again, in no way are we looking for the city to cover this cost, but I think it needs to be shown where our issues are, where the problems are, and what we really need to operate. In the past, we didn't include vacancies, and so we were able to manage, thinking that we would have attrition and everything. But we need to now show actual costs, including all vacancies, so that just to show you where we are. With our general funds, again, this slide here is the estimated expenditures in graph form, so you can see it all at one time right in front of you. And that's the 231,494. And that's with the 16%. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. It's late and I'm going blind here. This slide here shows you the comparisons. So it's showing you here the request for 25-26 with the cost, and then actual costs, nothing else in there. And then with the 2026, it's showing you the request with the actual vacancies across the district. And that's how we came up with the 23.2. Again, we're just showing you where we are. If we did a true budget, which included all vacancies, this is what we would need to operate. So we have a decision between the 18.4 and the 11.15. Next slide. What we did also was sometimes people ask us, well, can you break down your categories? So what we did here was just a cheat sheet, so to speak, which shows you what is in each line. So if you're looking for specific things of what's built into the budget. It just shows you how we summarize all of these costs and what line they would be in. And again, it shows you subs, natural gas, special ed tuition, transportation, maintenance. This is just general maintenance, vehicle repairs, and other contracted services. So you can see in those lines, we have quite a few items in those lines. Because we have to report back to the state in various ways, we pull the budgets together in categories, but then again, we have them broken out into what's actually in there. So to give you a better idea of what you're looking at. Next slide. The notable cost drivers, again, are always our personnel costs, our out-of-district tuition, and our transportation costs. Essentially, all of our full-time staff are part of a collective bargaining agreement. 4 of our largest bargaining agreements would be your teachers, your administrators, your paraprofessionals, which we're still in negotiations, and then your management staff. All other salary changes are still in negotiations. Our transportation cost renewal contract, I think we're projecting an anticipated increase of 2%. And then we have other price escalations as spelled out in long-term agreements and contracts, which are building maintenance, tuition, so forth and so on. And then also we still have the escalating special education costs, which are, seriously affecting our budget. Some good news I understand is going to be that we may be able to have an increase in a future year, but we're not sure. So that's not included in this budget. And then also we have our charter school increases, which are written by, I guess, state law or what have you, statute. So those increases are automatic. We can't negotiate those agreements at this point, at this time. Next slide. Okay, so current and ongoing mitigation plans, we have really worked on trying to mitigate some of these costs where we don't affect the classroom. So we've looked at some of our grants and to see what's in those grants and how could we utilize some of the services. But a lot of grants come with supplanting clauses, which means we can't supplant. So a typical example would be if you had a teacher that you provided to a Title I school, and then you provided that same service to a non-Title I school, you've just supplanted. And that's because you need to give each of the programs what they are entitled to with your state and local dollars, and then your federal dollars with their supplanting. That means you give those schools that are needy, you give them more. So they get what they're entitled to. So you would have to take all your schools first, break out the budget and what they're entitled to, whether you do it per pupil or however you do it. And then you on Title I, and the entitlement grants are on top of, not in place of. We continue to review all hiring requests to make sure that that first, of course, the students are getting a great teacher, but then we're also looking at the salary and are there other teachers with the same qualifications but maybe just have less experience. So we do a lot of that, and especially in areas where there is a supply, where we have specialty areas. We can't apply that, but we do try wherever we can. So we are monitoring what we're spending in terms of personnel and how to decrease those costs wherever possible. With the indirect costs, we're making sure that with all new grants that we, if there's a grant that allows for indirect costs, which are not that many on the education side, a lot of them would be federal funding, like your federal magnet program, your Title I program, and programs like that. They do allow you to grab indirect costs. Unfortunately, what happened with the indirect costs, once we started getting the ESSER and all of those other new grants that were coming in, we were allowed to capture indirect costs for those grants, which of course would pay for the staff to manage the grants. What has happened now, unfortunately, your federal grants can't count towards your expenditure. So what happens is that our indirect cost rate have gone down. I think they were 6.2, then they were 5.27, and now they are at 1.56. I got so many numbers in my head at this point. But we just completed the one for 25-26, and we went up maybe like 0.5%. While it's not a lot, it's at least we're trying to go back the other way now. But again, because we had to, claim ESSER and all of that, our indirect cost rate went way down. We're still looking at comparable districts to make sure that we're getting all of the money that we should for reimbursement rates, and that we're increasing our rates just as the other districts are increasing their rates. And then we also continue to include costs of utilities, security, custodial for programs that run after the normal day or on the weekend. And our justification for that is, like, if we have a Saturday program, normally we wouldn't have a Saturday program if we didn't, because we don't pay for those with our local funds because there just aren't enough. So what happens is that we can justify these costs for the Saturday programs for custodial, security, and utilities, and we do that by saying that if we didn't have this grant program running in our building, there would be no need for the overtime and all the security. So that's how we've been able to justify that and put utility, security, and custodial costs in programs. We are really looking at that because we're finding out that our security costs and our security basically is just a little high. It's high. I'm not going to try to justify it, but what's happening is because we're keeping our buildings open and programs are using our buildings. So we're really looking at what is in the building. If it's just one program, we're even looking at, well, maybe we can move it to another school, or not to affect the kids in any way, but we need to start thinking out of the box. What else can we do to cover some of these costs? Next slide. Okay, to see where we can make further cuts. We're trying to, again, as I said earlier, we're trying to make sure that all the cuts that we're looking at or moving, trying to get resources, that in no way do they affect the students. And right now we've frozen our general funds non-personnel expenditures, hoping that we will be able to recoup some of that so that if we do end up with a deficit for this fiscal year, it won't be as high as we anticipate right now. So we're really working on that. We're also looking, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at building uses and overtime costs. We're reviewing enrollment numbers and class size. We're realigning our summer learning programs, inclusive of the buses. We're looking at part-time staff to make sure that the part-time folks are in front of students and the services are assisting with the education of our students. We're also looking at increasing enrollment wherever we can at the interdistrict schools, because our funds are driven by enrollment. So if we don't have the right criteria, then we can end up having revenue loss. And then we're also looking at consolidation of bus routes, but that again would be where we're moving the students to. So that goes hand in hand with the enrollments. Next slide. And then this sheet here is just our budget timelines. We will be talking to the principals this week about where we've landed with the budgets. And then the next slide is just the future meetings we're thinking about. Well, we already are starting to schedule our community forum so that we could talk to the community and show them basically, just like we did tonight, where where we're spending our money and and getting their input, of course. And then we will be presenting a final budget to the Board of Education, hopefully on March 24th. We have our hearing with the Board of Alders. It's scheduled for April 24th. And then we will come back with a budget proposal once we adopt, once we get the numbers from the Board of Alders and any other numbers that may be coming through, then we'll be able to present a final budget with our recommendations and how we're going to mitigate the deficit. Next slide, please. And of course, what we don't know is the effect of uncertainty in Washington on our current and future funding, the effect that inclining enrollment would have on grants, and I meant to say our entitlement grants, our costs due to unfunded mandates, increased costs for healthcare and other benefits, impact of inflation on goods and services, and we're seeing that when we go out to bid. Just the transportation and the services have increased, and then also our cost of special education services and outplacements. I think, and then my final thoughts, the award to New Haven of ESSER 1, 2, and our ESSER grants have been extremely helpful as we design robust academic and other improvements for our students. And Dr. Negron earlier mentioned all of the wonderful work that the district has done with the money that we received from ARP, ESSER, and those grants. Now, due to the increased costs mentioned in earlier slides and decrease in grant revenue, we will face a projected deficit. We will also continue to explore new sources of funding opportunities, as well as continuing the challenges to close the gap. And while I have everyone here, I would like to thank the city, the state, and all that have contributed to our resources and whatever assistance they were able to provide. But it's like ESSER was a blessing because it allowed us to do so many things that we normally would not have done or could not have done. But now we're at the point where, okay, fine, how do we continue the path that we have provided? The path that we have provided, and how do we go forth knowing that the resources are dwindling at a pace faster than we can imagine. And at this time, I want to thank everybody, and I'm going to turn it back over to the board.
Dr. Yarborough, that does conclude my presentation tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Negron, Ms. Hannons, and your team for presenting the budget. Any questions or comments from the board? Dr. Joyner.
First of all, this has been one of the most comprehensive reports of this nature I've seen. And I really, I'm so proud of everybody that had a hand in creating it. When I think about what I'm hearing from my constituents and what I experienced myself because of the large number of grandchildren and great-grandchildren and nieces and nephews I have in the district, I would argue for trying to understand this thoroughly so that we don't play that divide and conquer game. Because quite frankly, the problem is not within the city or in the school district. The problem is in the funding structure that exists for public education. And I'm sure you've read A Tale of Two Cities. If you haven't, you should read it because you need to get ready for what's coming. And also, we have to remain united in order to make this happen. One of the big issues that I see out of this report is the differentiation between variable costs and fixed costs. And the impact that has on hiring teachers, hiring the very best teachers with the most experience. And that's very volatile expenditure. And I want the public to be reminded that another example is our acts of nature. I mean, we budgeted a certain amount for snow removal, and the snow guards didn't cooperate with us this year. And if anybody has a pipeline to them, please use it so that in future years we don't have to worry about excessive snow. The other point is that, and this is sad because I've experienced it as a student, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a college professor. The teacher shortage in this country is real. And I'll give you a good example. I worked in Brooklyn when I was at the Yale Child Study Center. And in Brooklyn, a child could have 3 consecutive years of having a non-certified teacher. And you know what kind of population Brooklyn is. I also work in East Palo Alto, California. Same thing. And that's right near Stanford University. So I think we're going to have to continue to do public relations work to help the public understand what we're up against, as well as who we're up against. And I also think that it is immoral for the state to have a legal mandate, a legal funding mandate, and not honor it. Because that's what's, as Marvin Gaye would ask, what's going on? That's what's going on. That we have a legal mandate, but we do not honor it. And we're only thinking about the impact that it has on schools. It has an impact on this entire city, because the wealth in this city is not enough to sustain these consistent increases. But yet our state says education is a creature of the state. Well, the city is doing more to feed that creature than the state is. And we need to keep that in mind. And we also need to think about that when people come down here running for governor and ask for our votes. That ought to be the defining issue of the next campaign for governor. Are you going to fund urban schools in accordance with the legal mandate that you created in the halls of legislation? But the one thing that I hope that we don't do, and I guess that comes out of my experience growing up in the segregated South, that we don't allow these problems to cause us to turn on each other. Mm-hmm. Let me stop now because I might get too emotional. But thank you, Mr. President. I conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you. And I want to say I agree with Dr. Joyner on his comments there. And I would direct people to slide 8, where it does lay out that chart that shows the local contributions to what makes up our per pupil funding. And if you take a look at that across, New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, Waterbury, the urban districts, New Haven is more generous to their schools than these other towns are, even though those other towns also have, very similar amounts of poverty and other types of, large amounts of special education, English language learners, et cetera. So New Haven is a generous town when it comes to its schools. And I think the issue is at the state where we're one of the richer states. We have more billionaires. We're in the top 10 for billionaires per capita, et cetera. And that there's just inequitable funding in the state. And I think that it's key to take a look at that. I hope that when this gets written about, because even though this is a draft budget and it's going to be fine-tuned and some changes will be made, this is what's going to be written about this week and drive some of the conversation. I hope that people, when they do that, they do some of the math that's listed here. That when you take a look at the chart of the per pupil funding in New Haven County, and we're kind of in the middle, you can go, oh, we're in the middle, and that seems pretty good. But when you take a look at what the middle buys you in terms of what is available, just remember that the difference between those districts is times more than 19,000 students. And so when you take a look at what they're able to afford to have per pupil in Hamden and to what we're able to do right next door, that's a real number. That's more than $50 million difference if we had Hamden's per pupil funding. And to just make it even more, drill it into something, a big example, because we did talk about in a purchase order about some HVAC work that's happening at Cross, and we're very well aware of many issues at Cross in that building in terms of physical plant. If you take a look at Hamden High's per pupil funding versus Wilbur Cross's per pupil funding, there's a big difference there. And similar, large comprehensive schools, Cross has more students, they have more funds, and so they're able, for their less number of students, to have 154 certified staff members, and we have about 138 compared to the most recent Connecticut State report cards. And that might lead to some of the reasons why their accountability index, which is that composite number of 12 indicators that the state uses to try to judge the how successful a school is. So you can say, oh yeah, Hamden does a much better job than New Haven does. Boy, New Haven must just be, shoddy work, etc. But it's like, no, I think a lot of it is they just have more adults in that building working with those students. We heard tonight a lot of issues just when you don't have a second grade teacher, when we're not able to have one in a room. So just imagine that across the board. And that's what those numbers mean. They don't look very big until you do the math. And I think that that's just an important thing for us to be able to take a look at. What does that difference buy? And that difference buys filling the entire staffing guidelines list. That means enough social workers, school librarians. It means enough school interventionists. It means more people knocking on doors to try to get kids in the schools. More support for parents. That's what's missing. And we have buildings that are falling apart because when we have structural increases in our labor costs. We have increases in inflation. Schools buy eggs too. I couldn't even find eggs yesterday when I was at the grocery store. They were sold out at more than $10 a dozen. So we buy eggs too, and along with a bunch of other things. And so those are the things that we're taking a look at. And I think that we just need to be able to ask, what does that buy? And it buys buildings that don't leak on students and teachers while they're trying to teach and learn. And it means more people to work with the students. That's what it means. And I greatly appreciate this. I've been on the board now about 6 years. This is the best presentation yet. I think we're telling the story better. I think that there's information here that people that want to actually take a look at it, to see some of the constant complaints we have. Oh, you have too many administrators, and it's like, no, do the comparison. Look at the state report cards. We don't. We're below the state average. We're below the average of the other urban districts. And so I think that that's just key. The only, a couple little things that I would mention, and again, I wouldn't take the time, I would follow up in an email, but this is going to get written about this week. Just to stress that this is a draft, that I think that it will be important to normalize the dates. Some of the things is, from the 2022-23 school year, the 23-24, some are current numbers. And I know a lot of that is we're waiting for the state to update their state report cards and to have their data that's out so that we can have normalized with the most recent data to look at it across the state. But I think that will be try to be key in the next week or two while this is coming together. I would also suggest on slide 17, where we're talking about the two budgets and the two differences between them, the one without vacancies and the one with vacancies, I think we need to talk about what those vacancies are that you're talking about, because it's not the entire staffing guidelines report that shows the more than $30 million if we were actually going to have enough social workers per students based on what a caseload should be, and rather than just what we can afford. That's not what you're talking about. I think you're talking about actual vacancies listed, but I think making it clear would be important. And I think also making clear on slide 18, which was the one that shows all the different things, that shows a large increase in New Haven, that unless the state dollars go up, which is being talked about at the state, not that the governor wants it to happen, but unless the state dollars go up, then the local costs, what the New Haven will have to continue to burden, will go up. Or there's limits to what New Haven can do, so services will go down. And after being on Finance and Operations Committee for 6 years now, I can tell you, cuts are coming unless we can get more equitable funding from the state. If the governor's budget becomes the state budget, well, the math is listed right there. So I think that that's just something to make clear, is that the New Haven number doesn't have to go up. But that's just what the reality is. That's going to be the gap that New Haven will be faced with. Can New Haven fill that? Or what cuts are we going to have over programs that already do not have enough people to do things in buildings that are up to standard? So I think that those are some changes that I would make. But I do want to echo Dr. Joyner's comments. Great presentations, the best one yet of the 6 or so I've seen over the years. And I think this goes a long way to telling that story. And I hope people are ready and willing to listen to the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Mayor Elicker.
Thanks. Just a couple of quick additional comments. The slide 8 that divides the local and state and federal portions of the funding. I'd also note that not only is New Haven paying more per pupil than our other counterparts, but that slide is from the 2022-23 school year. And since then, we've increased our local share by another $15 million approximately. So that percentage has gone up even more because I know our local other counterparts have not increased as significantly the education funding. So I just want to publicly thank the alders for being very supportive of that. It's painful because we paid for that through our taxes. And that's not an easy thing, but I just want to thank the alders for that. I'd encourage people, there's a big push at the state level, a big push to get state funding to be increased this session. And folks at the state need to hear from you all. So please reach out to leadership at the state, whether it's the governor's office or other legislators, as they need to hear just how important it is, and to, I think, also dispel some of the myths that are out there. And just a quick question. So it sounds like, Dr. Negron, you're not expecting a vote on this tonight, right?
No, again, we wanted to show the true costs, and for everybody to understand where we are right now.
Okay.
Like
Thanks.
like Mr. Wilcox mentioned, right? Unless more state dollars come, we don't know how much more we can ask the city to do. It means we have to start looking at services that will need to be decreased.
Appreciate that. I note that the governor's proposal has a slight increase to ECS, but it's a little bit over $1 million, which may sound like a lot to folks, but it's a very small percentage of our overall budget. Thanks, Dr. Negron and Ms. Hannons, for putting together the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. So thank you very much, Dr. Negron, Ms. Hannons. The report and presentation gave a comprehensive and a full picture of our district, and I appreciate that, because I think sometimes it can be lost when we're just looking at the numbers. So thank you very much for the walkthrough, for the education, even as we review this. And I do hope that the same education goes forward in the same time is invested by our various constituents in terms of understanding our district and our needs, and also our requirements and dreams. Ms. Hannons?
I just wanted to also I would be remiss if I didn't, but I wanted to take the time to thank the finance team, because they played a large role in putting these numbers together, and we kept going back and forth and sideways and up and down and trying to make sure that that we had everything that we needed. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the assistant superintendents as well, because they also played a part in looking at what we had and how we could move stuff around. We worked on the staffing plan. So far, we've just done one section. They cost me $1.9 million, but but we were able to put, the staffing plan in place. We're doing it over 5 years. But we did make a dent in the way we're budgeting. Everything was off the table. We actually almost were back at zero-based budgeting, but we would not have had this with all of the help that and the team that played a part in this. We reached out, we asked them, and I have to say that they did come through. And I just want to take this opportunity, if I don't get another one, to just say thank you to everyone that worked with me.
Yes. Thank you to the team for your service, for your leadership in doing this work. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Negron, for your report. Next on our agenda is my report, President's report. Want to say two things. One, we are one of the items is to determine our next location for our Board of Ed meetings. And the technology review of the schools is still being done, and then we will bring the recommendation to you for conversation. And also on the topic of assigning the committee roles. Right now, I am still visiting the committees. This past week, I was able to visit the building committee, the Head Start committee, and I will get to the other ones. And also thank Mr. Juarez is now here, and we can continue to move forward looking at the committee composition. Any questions or comments? All right, thank you. Next, the teaching and learning report, Dr. Joyner.
Okay, we had our meeting last Wednesday, and it was a meeting where that team presented the statistics around our students and student behavior. That's critically important, and it was a phenomenal report. I don't know if you guys were going to present tonight or at the next meeting. I have to ask Dr. Negron and Dr. Redhannens. I suspect it'll be at the next meeting, because that is
Right. So knowing that we were going to be spending so much time today on the budget, that is now on deck for today. We still have on deck, we have to bring to you where we are on the two-way communication model that we're putting together. So that one's going to be next, and probably followed by the one from teaching and learning. So all of that to say more to come.
right. So you made a good executive decision.
Yeah, because we don't, trust me, I don't want to keep you here till 9 o'clock.
Right. Yeah, and my point too is people criticize administrators. We have some of the hardest working people in the business, and they don't work 8-hour days. And they have children. Some cases they have sick parents, and I can't say enough. They work on Saturdays and Sundays too. So I can't say enough about the team of staff that I work with. And in many ways, it's not a job for them, it's a movement. And that's a good thing, because it's a movement for me. And so I'm looking forward to that report. And what I would ask is that we send a draft out to the board if we haven't already, the board minutes. And I would also ask the board and the listening public, when you see the report, to see the variability among our student populations. And the fact that students that have the most trauma and the most damage to themselves are more, it costs more to educate kids like that. They need more. I mean, I was one of them, so I know. So that concludes my report. So hopefully we'll get that reaction to the report at the next time. I lean on the superintendent to make her decisions about the timeliness of any of those reports. So that concludes my remarks. And
thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Thank you. The facilities naming committee report, Dr. Joyner.
Yes. Okay. So we got a great event coming up on March 15th, and I would respectfully ask as many people as possible to come to Hill House on Saturday at 11 o'clock a.m. March 15th for the dedication of the foyer to Dr. Lonnie Garris Jr. Dr. Lonnie Garris Jr. worked in the district for 20 years as a high school principal. I don't know if anyone has ever served a high school for 20 years. And he came from poverty himself. He graduated from Booker T. Washington High School in Norfolk, Virginia, at the time that the system was segregated. It was supposed to be equal, but it was certainly segregated. And raised in a single parent home, graduated from Norfolk State University with a degree in industrial education, and kept working, and got more education, and decided to dedicate himself to Hill House High School. And so much so that when he was appointed principal at Hill House High School, he left Wallingford, where he lived, and moved a half a block from the school, and sent his son there. You know, so if you have a restaurant, you don't want to eat your own food, then that might say something about the quality of your restaurant. So he sent his own son to Hill House, and Aaron graduated from the University of Southern California and is doing quite well. And his oldest son is a retired colonel. So March 15th, save the date, 11 o'clock. We're going to probably have food and music. I think Mayor Elicker is going to sing Stand By Me, which is his go-to song. And maybe we should have a version called Stand By Us that we can let Matt lead. So that'll be that. And we have 3 people coming up for recognition. Sal Verderam, greatest coach in the history of the state of Connecticut, and also an ambassador to most of West Africa. Bob Lamel, who created this mega conference that people are so proud of now. And God, there's one other. I guess I'm having a senior moment. But anyway, that we have some more on the docket, and we will get them out to you as soon as we can get things done on the tech side, just like we voted for the Pappas honor. And that concludes my report on facilities naming.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Seeing none. Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
Okay, thank you. And before I begin, I'll just add as a parenthetical, if the goal is to get people to come to the event, do not advertise that I'll be singing. That's
well, that's the comedy section.
Yeah, well, okay, bill it as comedy then. Yeah, okay. For a Head Start, we did meet. Dr. Yarborough joined us. That was lovely. We a couple things to report. We remain around 99% enrollment rate with 17 applications on the waiting list. So very robust enrollment, and that's going well. A lot of the effort coming up is in a lot of preparation for the Performance Area 2 that the Head Start comes in and is doing a major evaluation of us. This is just part of what they do periodically, go through these measures. So a lot of effort is getting going together, prepping for that, and also pulling together all the data that they review as part of this. So that was the major focus there. The only other thing I'll mention is that there is now also a Department of Health nurse in place at the Mayo School, and this is in addition to the health clinic there. So thank you to the health department for having that nurse in place. So that concludes my Head Start report.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion on Head Start? And congratulations to the team on the enrollment. Next, a citywide school building committee report, Mr. Wilcox.
So we did meet last week, one thing we went through the stewardship report about the various projects and the difference in the district. One thing I did notice when I was going to go review that today, that the stewardship report is not yet posted from Thursday's meeting. So if that could get posted, that would be great. But we did go through all those projects and had some good discussion throughout the meeting. So
Thank you. Any discussion on the building committee? Thank you. Finance and operations report, Mr. Wilcox.
So in addition to going through the budget presentation and also all the action items that we've already talked about this evening, Mr. Carter did provide a part-time custodial update, reporting that he's been hard at work on dealing with billing issues with the contractor, and that has improved, and the monitoring of the service has resulted in lower bills, which is a plus. He also said that the RFP for part-time custodial services will be posted on the city OpenGov site coming up this week. And he anticipates that a contractor will be selected and an agreement prepared by late May. He also reported that they're in the process of preparing the RFP for facility services. And the final thing I'll mention is that we did, because Mr. Carter, as people know, is soon not going to be with the district. We asked the superintendent to provide a report at our next meeting, an update on the hiring of a COO and what some of the next steps are for that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion for the finance and operations report? Okay, thank you. Next is the governance report, Dr. Benitez.
Yes, good evening, Board of Education members and the public. We will have a meeting next Thursday, and we will be reviewing some policies that need to be updated, and we continue to encourage all other committee members who are working on policies to continue to update them and send them to governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion for governance? All right, seeing none. Next is the Food Service Task Group report. That is myself. The Food Service Task Group did meet. Two quick things to mention. One, the food service team officially received their clear positive report from the audit. They were asked to document some things, adjust some of the things they do. The team for the audit came back and did another review and cleared our food service team on everything. So we're grateful for just the collective work that was done. Also, the food distribution that occurs during the gaps when the school is not in session for food. That team also reported they had a really good distribution the last break. It was on a Saturday. They were able to partner with families and provide all the meals, and the groceries went. But they're not resting on their laurels. They're also seeing how they can more effectively connect with the families of our New Haven public schools. And so they are partnering even more closely with different district teams within our schools, school counselors, in order to find who would appreciate the food and how they can get the groceries to them. So I just appreciate their ongoing work and the partnerships that happen between our food service team and our community partners and state partners. Any discussion as relates to the Food Service Task Group report? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd be happy to move that we adjourn as my first official act on the board.
Second.
All right, so I see a motion to adjourn. I see a second. We're not going to discuss it. Mr. Juarez.
I have no discussion.
Thank you. How do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Okay, Dr. Benitez.
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox.
Yes.
Dr. Joyner.
C.
Ms. Downer.
Yes.
Ms. Cologne.
Yes.
Mr. Musser.
Yes.
Mayor Eliker.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well.